Welcome back. A lot of us like to bake during the summer, but this summer's been a little hot. So if you're anything like me, you might be slightly turned off by turning on the oven.
Well, Jess, our next guest has that problem solved. Here with recipes for baking on the barbecue is culinary and baking expert Jo Notkin. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Before we begin with the baking on the barbecue, let's talk about what this last year has been like for you. Like so many other people, 2020, the pandemic has been really tough. You had to shut down your catering business that was based in Montreal, but you pivoted to other endeavors. Tell us about that.
It was hard. I think it was hard for anybody in the food space for sure. We were actually going to close catering and open up a catering shop right when the pandemic hit. So it's a bit of a sad moment not to open the shop, but the whole ethos was really about how can we share what we do with more people. So the sort of idea to create all of our amazing baking that we would do for our catering clients, and then we just decided, why don't we package these and ship them across Canada? And that way we can share all these special moments with more people. So in a way, it was like a pivot that sort of ended up being really like kind of a dream come true.
That is beautiful. And Joe, today you're going to continue the sharing because you're going to show us how to bake from scratch on the barbecue. I don't know if a lot of people do this or know that it's actually an option. So let's start off with sort of what we need to know before we fire up those grills.
The first thing I tell people is you got to have a gas barbecue, no charcoal. Charcoal lends like a pretty smoky flavor, and that's not really what you want in your cake or whatever you're baking. We have something that we like to call the baking elevator, and this is a little kit, but you can make it at home with whatever you have. I like to buy these trays at Restaurant Supply. They're about $10. Great to have. You don't care so much what happens to them. Always have a trusty oven thermometer. It's like $5 or $8. This is great to have. I keep it in the barbecue. I can always check what temperature it is. And after a while, you'll be able to tell with your dials where you want to get if you want a specific temperature. And the other thing to think about is raising up your baking, kind of like putting something on a middle rack in your oven. And so we have a little rack like this, but you can create it with whatever kind of baking rack you have at home. Sometimes I use some little tin cans just so that your baking is not sitting on a hot surface like a grill.
Oh.
And this works great.
Okay, well, let's get started with these recipes. I am intrigued by the first one. It's a brownie meringue cake, Joe, which I mean, I don't even know how to make in the oven. So the fact that you've made this on the barbecue is just like fascinating. Please explain. We will eat.
What's so nice about it is that you can use a baking mix. You can use a pre-made brownie mix. You can make your favorite brownies, whatever brownies you love. I like to put it in about a 9x9 pan. And then I know people are a little afraid of meringues, but they're pretty easy. Lots of videos to watch online about how to do them. And eggs are pretty inexpensive. So if you screw up one batch, you can try again. So you need 4 egg whites. And we like to put it in a mixer and get them foamy. And then add sugar slowly. Then I'm going to beat it pretty hard, high speed, for about 6-7 minutes until we have like nice peaks. And those peaks are going to let us have a lot of air so that we can fold in some nuts and some cornstarch and some chocolate. We're going to put that in a bowl and mix it together, pour that in. And then we want to like fold in all that air that we just created. We just want to like fold in, not lose any of the air, swirl those mixtures through. And then I like to dollop it over the top of the raw brownie mix. So I like to dollop the meringue over, and then I'm going to kind of like make some beautiful swoops and curves in it, lots of peaks so that I got little like brown bits everywhere, because it's going to just bake all at once in the barbecue. It's nice and dry in the barbecue, and it's going to bake the brownies and make the meringue crisp at the same time. Sort of an impossible cake, and it looks so amazing when you put it out on the table.
Not does it only look amazing, the play with textures is just fantastic. It's blowing my mind. It's so much fun.
Rich, decadent, and nut. I like a nut in a dessert. I like it.
Okay, Joe, next up, you have a cookie recipe that you say makes for a perfect cookie crumble topping for like tons of summer desserts.
So I like to be prepared. I make this cookie crumble. I always keep it in a jar. You can keep some in the freezer. You can put it on anything. You could put it on ice cream. You can put it on sorbet. You could put it on yogurt. I have a bowl here. I have 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I have some brown sugar in here, granulated sugar, a little bit of salt. Now, I like to say use what you have on hand, use the flavors that you love. I'm going to put in cinnamon and ginger. You could put in cardamom. You could put in some black pepper. You know, really creative here. I'm also going to put a half a cup of walnuts in. You know, use whatever nuts you have. If you have some pecans, put that in. I also say that you're supposed to use oats in here, but I'm going to serve this to somebody who can't have oats. So I'm actually going to put in a half a cup of sliced almonds. I just say, like, use what you have. That's sort of the fun of this. It's just like you get creative. So I'm just going to stir this around in here. And then I like to add cold butter usually, but we're outside and I wanted to make sure that I could show you this quickly. So I've just melted 1 cup of butter here. That's 2 sticks of butter. And I'm just going to pour that in and stir it around. And what I want is kind of like a crumbly, doughy sort of texture. Once I kind of scoop this around like this, you'll see it's kind of like cookie dough and like a little bit of a cookie dough. And so I'm going to take a baking sheet that I have here all set up. And what I'm going to do is just kind of dollop this on to the tray. I'm just going to put like little bits everywhere, and then I'm going to make sure it's in kind of like crumbles, squeeze it together a little bit.
I'm loving how adaptable this recipe is. I love how carefree you are about that. Like, use what you have. Maybe it'll come out different every time, but that's kind of the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, like, you know, you don't need to go out and buy a new bag of oats. You just use whatever you have on hand. So I just kind of like press this around the tray like this. And then I'm going to bake it on the barbecue. And what I love about baking it on the barbecue is that I can do this right after I've cooked dinner. I don't need to turn anything on. The heat is already on. It's not going to matter too much as long as the barbecue is not too hot. And you want to keep your eye on it. Cook it about 10, 15 minutes, kind of keep your eye on it. And then you just have these beautiful golden crumbs.
All right, so Jo, you've made the crumble, but you were hinting earlier at using the crumble in a dessert. So what is that?
So I'm going to show you how to make a fresh fruit crumble. You know, anybody can sort of bake up a crumble, but this is sort of the lazy man's crumble. So I just like to take some fresh berries. You can take whatever fruit you have on hand. Peaches are coming up into season. I just I chop them up. You know, you can mix them if you want. And then I almost always have some cream in the fridge in the summer. I have some whipped cream that I already whipped up.
Ooh.
And what I love to do is just spoon a little bit over each one. You could also do this with ice cream. You could also do this with sorbet. I'm just going to scoop that over. And then I have my amazing crumble. So just a little bit of that goes on top in just mere moments.
Oh, that's easy.
They're so pretty.
For today, the last recipe that you're going to show us for baking on the barbecue is a Parmesan pesto cheese twist. Yum. Sounds so fancy, but easy. It's easy.
First of all, because you can buy puff pastry. What is more easy than that? Nothing. What I love to do is take the puff pastry and I'm going to lay it on a cutting board and I'm going to roll it out to about 1/8 of an inch, get it just a little bit thinner. Then I'm going to spread some grated Parmesan, spread it out on the board, lay my puff pastry over it, and then spread a little more Parmesan on top. And then I roll it with a rolling pin. That sort of presses the cheese into both sides of the puff pastry. I also like to use some pesto. You can make it, freeze it, especially this time of year. Great to get basil from the market. Or you can buy it, or you can leave it out if you don't like it, or you can't eat nuts. I like to spread it on half of the puff pastry, and then I'm going to fold the other half over top and roll it out again. Now, I like to add in special little flavors, kind of my thing, hunting for interesting flavors. You could put Espelette pepper. You could put a really nice smoky paprika. I also like to use black and white sesame seeds, anything to give it like a depth of color and texture. So I'm going to lay that on over top and roll it out again nice and thin to about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now, I love to cut these nice and thick for a really beautiful, fun presentation. It's really all about making something simple, extraordinary. So I like to cut it pretty thick. You can cut it thinner. It doesn't really matter. It's really important to get them all the same size so they bake at the same time on the barbecue. So I like to cut these nice big strips and then I'm going to twist them. It seems complicated, so easy. You just take one end, take the other end, and just start twisting maybe 3-4 times. And you're just going to get a lovely twist on your sheet. Now, these really should go into the fridge and get nice and cold before you put them on a hot barbecue. That's where you get the puff in puff pastry. Cold pastry meets a hot oven or hot barbecue, and then it puffs. That is the chemical reaction, and it's so impressive.
They look so fancy.
Jo, these are delicious. I love the pesto. They're so light. They go down easy. What would you think if I if I crumbled up some bacon and jammed it into the twist?
Where do you live? I'm coming to your party.
Great. I'm going to improvise a little bacon in here.
Lainey, you've blown my mind with that insight. That was incredible. Jo, you've blown all of our minds with these great ideas. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I just want to add in, don't feel bad if you don't have a barbecue. I know some people don't. You can make all of these in the oven.
And for all of these great recipes for baking on the barbecue, head to our social media channels. We'll be right back.